It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, David Braun. Hi, David. How are you?
Hey, how are you doing? Great to be here with you.
Doing fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. Let's see. I'm looking at your bio. Ordained Minister, Certified Mediator Consultant. What is that? I've never heard of that.
Well, it's certainly it's a little bit. I'm a little more busy these days. It's basically conflict management, and so whether it's in the workplace, two neighbors, could even be a conflict in the family, but you got people that are just having a hard time seeing eye to eye, and the conflict grows to a point where they don't even want to look at each other, and then they call me, and I kind of help them talk through it and try to get to a place that's better than they are at right at the present.
Like a marriage counselor?
I guess you could call it that. I mean, I have myself practiced more in the workplace conflict, so two managers at each other's throats, or a manager and employee. Sometimes it's a executive team, and they're just the conflict is just bogging down their productivity. But there's marriage mediator type that help on that end too.
Well, why would a corporation try to do that? I mean, places that I've been before, now maybe times have changed, but places that I've been before would simply get rid of the people who were causing conflict.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can give you a quick example. I have a colleague that, was dealing with a national company, and they were losing money from a division. They didn't understand why. So they called in my friend and his colleagues, and they did a quick analysis. They found out that there was a misunderstanding between two divisional VPs at a Christmas gathering, and one of the VPs had thought that the other individual had snubbed them because he had not seen a handshake coming out, and so from that time on was kind of making decisions that were counterproductive, out of a bit of an attitude, telling his people in his division, let's slow down, we won't deliver our product as fast. And so sometimes, depending on the size and the nature of the business or the company, people are not even understanding what's going on. Why are we having delays? Sometimes this comes right down to human emotion, and it's not being verbalized.
Well, that's very interesting. It also sounds very childish.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the feud between Paul Allen and the Sultan of Brunei when they were trying to, say whose yacht was bigger. I mean, it just reminded me of two little kids fighting in the bathtub over a floaty toy. Really.
It's true. And some kids never do grow up, but yeah, it's amazing some of the most archaic things that people hold on to and start to develop a judgment or a prejudice against another human being. It's just ridiculous sometimes.
To my point, then it would be valuable to a company to try to mediate something like that rather than just replace those people?
Well, if the company, the leader in question understands and knows, who are the individuals and, where does this all begin? But if you've got a team and you don't, a lot of times leaders don't know who's to blame, what's going on, and so they got to kind of backtrack and figure out. And if you fire the wrong person, you've lost a lot of productivity, a lot of history, a lot of, implicit knowledge walks out the door, and you got to start from scratch, and that costs money. So it's not as simple as, okay, you guys got to fight, you know what, figure it out, or I'm going to fire you all. things go underground and there's more sabotaging. It really is amazing how these fires can grow. Now, you know what? Some companies, they just say, they go ahead and do what they can. Some fire, some pause. Not every company would hire a person like me, but certainly during the pandemic, I just had a healthcare provider dealing with like people that are in palliative care, and there's a lot of fear and stress, and so parents of their kids, of the adult kids are nervous, and there's all kinds of anxiety floating around, that things are coming out of their mouths, and assumptions are being made that sometimes aren't even based in reality. But people don't know. Management team isn't sure what's going on. Leaders aren't sure where it started. So it can get complicated.
I suppose in a very large corporation that would be true, because the CEO, if this is like a national company where they have a lot of different branches and franchises, they're not going to know every single person. That's true.
I mean, I've dealt with smaller organizations too, like everything from a church of 300 people, and maybe the Sunday school person and the business owner is volunteering, but the business owner has hired the Sunday school teacher, and once a conflict and finger pointing starts to happen, people don't want to risk their relationship in the community, right? So it can happen even at and it's not necessarily even church. It could be, a nonprofit group, Habitat for Humanity, serving locally, whatever, right? And I'm not saying that organization is someone I'm working with, but that kind of an example.
Well, I think that's a good segue into your book. You've got a book out called Are We All Cannibals? And your talking points are very interesting. Normally, I don't use talking points that are sent to me because they're not necessarily that stimulating, but yours really are. And so thank you. So whoever wrote them, if you wrote them, good job. They do absolutely inspire me to use them. And I think the first one I want to hit on is, what is the significance of that? Because it's a great title for a book, and if it's anything related to what we were just talking about in a figurative sense, it makes perfect sense. So what is the significance of the title?
I love your entry there, because that I think that's the starting point, and that's why a lot of people are picking it up and asking questions. But the title, Are We All Cannibals? It's really a rhetorical question, and it's meant to invite readers to examine the potential ways that they're feeding on others, be it socially, emotionally, relationally, in order to satisfy the valid human needs, or cravings for stability, provision, belonging, significance, protection, some of these just base level needs that we have. Now, when those needs are being threatened, and we're again, referencing the pandemic, and people's livelihoods are on the line, and sometimes it affects their mobility. All these things are threatening their base needs. That's when we start to, as I say, kind of move in what I would call a little bit of social cannibalism. So I don't know if that kind of helps.
Yeah, but it brings up more questions. So you're talking about, well, I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. Okay, can you go a little further into that? Obviously, when you're talking, let's hold on one second. Let's talk about, first of all, what it's not. We're not talking about people actually eating each other, right?
No. Thank you for clarifying that. When I say feeding on others socially, emotionally, relationally, I'm talking about the kind of the base level manipulation, withdrawal, comparison, gossip, all those backbiting, etc., finger pointing.
Okay.
Those kind of, and I call it social cannibalism. But yeah, that's really where I'm leading to. Now, obviously, when someone pulls it off the shelf, or they're like, "Oh gosh, what's this about?" I say, "Are we all cannibals?" Because for any out there, and I put myself in that category where I might come off self-righteous. Guess what, Dave? You have done this. You will do it. You are vulnerable to it. So that's why I kind of throw it out to all of us as a rhetorical question to invite everyone. You know, and it's a constructive question to engage it. It kickstarts the self-awareness piece, as opposed to, oh, I know someone who needs this book. You know, my neighbor or my cousin or, you know, that guy at work who's a real jerk. He needs to, you know, he's the cannibal. So that's kind of the reason we kind of opened it up to broad. Are we all cannibals? Everyone.
Okay. I'm going to use a different term just for a second, just for clarification. But I think we've all met people in our lives who we felt to be tremendously emotionally needy, where if you walked into a room, they wanted to dominate the conversation with you. They wanted to try to keep you attuned to them and giving them your full attention, when you may, in fact, not be terribly interested in what they have to say. We've met people like that at work. We've met people like that socially. Are those people that type of person? Is that what you would be referring to?
I think that would be a good example. In the book, I break down 4 expressions of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about cannibalism. And so what you're talking about in terms of, you know, that needy person that just needs to kind of get the spotlight, that would be one type of expression. Now, I don't know, do you want me to kind of share all of them, or does that kind of answer your question?
Well, it does answer my question, but go ahead. Yeah, share the other ones so we get a comparison.
Okay. Yeah, so I in the book I highlight 4 behaviors, 4 different mindsets that lead to again what I call social cannibalism, and they are the dictator, and you can imagine what that's pointing to, a person who's kind of controlling, kind of judgy, and I'll just sit on this for a moment. It doesn't always mean, you know, the loudest person who's dominating the conversation. I've seen passive aggressive people. Oh, yes. And maybe you know, we all have, maybe that they're very behind the scenes, kind of pulling the strings, but they're kind of moving things in a direction, and so it could be the outstanding, outvoiced, you know, emotionally immature person, but not necessarily. The second one, so dictator's number 1, the loner is the second one, and that's the self-protective person, the person that, you know, is withdrawing. I think, you see this if you're really close to someone in a, you know, a romantic sense. You can have someone who, in order to, they feel vulnerable and they just pull into themselves, and it can be hard if you're you know, in a meaningful relationship with that person. Say, hey, what's going on? Like, just talk to me. But it can happen in a social group too, where they isolate themselves. They're all kind of on their own, doing their own thing, hyper independence to, you know, to the challenge of whatever groups and families they're a part of. So that's loner is the second one. The third one is the slave, and this is a person or a group of people, very subservient mindset. You know, it can lead, you know, there can be addictive tendencies. The interesting thing is that you could have a slave that would be kind of holding on to a dictator. There can be a dysfunctional there. Okay, and then the fourth mindset is what I call the hoarder, and this is just basically on the mindset level, always thinking win-lose, always scheming, comparing, trying to deal with you know, scarcity through calculating myself number 1. And those 4 kind of make up the different expressions that you can see cannibalism kind of exhibiting itself, or social cannibalism, as I mentioned.
Well, I think everybody to some degree has some degree of all four of those.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So the trick is...
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so the trick is really a balance, right? Because if you're too much to one of the four, it's probably not good in a social situation. Yeah. So, okay. All right, go ahead.
So there is a counterpoint. And by the way, because some people, get curious about, well, where did you come up with these four behavior mindsets? And for me, I studied, over a period of 10 years, I studied close to 4,000 years of history and started to find these patterns in human behavior, some of your lead outstanding characters and so on. But there is a counterpoint to each one of those styles. And so actually I have a little kind of assessment tool that, person can find out which of the four that they're strongest in terms of what I call them shadows. But the impact drivers, and I'll just really quickly, because they're kind of self-explanatory, they're the helper, the reconciler, the advocate, and the giver. And so they're the counterpoint. So for the hoarder, it's the giver. For the slave, it's the advocate. For the loner, it's the reconciler. And for the dictator, it's the helper. Almost the exact opposite. And, obviously, I know in my own personal relationships where I've been, sitting in the driver's seat and been the dictator, it doesn't go well over a long period of time. But when I shift gears and move into helper, you know what? We've got potential to move in a positive direction. So,
well, just talking about personal relationships, generally speaking, the opposites do attract. If you have two dictators in a relationship, a domestic relationship, that doesn't usually last too long. And if you have, two slaves or two, whichever, it doesn't. No, one has to be one way, one has to be the other. That usually works out pretty well. We are getting a little low on time here, but I want to hit on one last one of your talking points. So who is this book for? Why did you write this, and for who?
Okay, well, really quickly, this book is Are We All Cannibals, really for men and women ages 18 to 45-ish, and people with an interest in spiritual growth. The actual term social cannibalism I got in 2010. At the time, I was a minister in a church, and there was conflict and, you could say, social cannibalism everywhere. And I had a dream, and in that dream, Christ was actually, emotional, and he was saying, hey, look, my people are caught up in social cannibalism. And I had never heard that term. I didn't know, I just where did that, I didn't have too much pizza. This is not a pizza dream. Where is this coming from? And I asked, what is social cannibalism? And he basically said in the dream, it's when people feed off of each other instead of, finding their source from me. So that put me on a quest, and I since then I'm not pastoring anymore, but I since then, even as I'm working in the marketplace, different companies, have been exploring that whole concept. And so that's part of kind of what the book is for. People with an interest in spiritual growth, to kind of understand how does my faith and spirituality affect some of these deeply rooted kind of habits of mindset or behavior that, are maybe bumping up against people or things. We're seeing it at a national level. I can go into companies now and tell you what kind of, social cannibalism culture they have and how do we shift to the impact drivers. So,
okay. The book is called Are We All Cannibals? My guest is David Braun. Do you have a website that you can give out for the book, or a personal website?
Yeah, for sure. So if listeners go to areweallcannibals.com, and that will give them the links. It'll give them further interviews, resources that they can pick up and find out more and learn more from what you've heard today.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, David. This was interesting. And best of luck with your book.
Hey, thank thank you so much. I really appreciate your show. It's fun listening to, and it's an honor to be here with you.
Well, best of luck with your book. I hope it does well.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Douglas Coleman's Don't Do a Podcast is a dryly humorous rant about Douglas's pet peeve, the unrelenting torrent of podcasts hitting the web on a constant basis. As technology has put podcasting within the reach of anyone, many wholly unqualified people have taken the plunge. This witty polemic tries to persuade them from broadcasting their drivel using Douglas's brand of sarcastic humor. Now on Amazon, only 99 cents.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Love coffee, huh? But wait a minute. It seems like every time you finish a cup of coffee, you get all of these side effects along with it. Heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, acid reflux. As the world's first and only organic acid-free coffee, Tyler's Coffee is able to provide a healthier option in the solution for more than 100 million individuals who have sensitive stomachs or suffer from acid-related modalities. This is Tyler's acid-free coffee. Coffee without the consequences.
Hi, this is John Morgan, production supervisor for DJC Productions. You're listening to The Douglas Coleman Show.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Marc Watson. Hi, Marc. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on. You were actually on before, weren't you? A few months ago?
Yeah, I believe I was on, last fall, early fall, I believe it was the last time we spoke.
Well, maybe it was many months ago. Okay. And
I think so, but for my last major release was when, yeah.
Okay, so now you've got a new book out called Catching Hell. What was the book that you were promoting then? What was your last one before this one?
That was Between Conversations, Tales from the World of Reunion. That was my short story collection that takes place in the same world as Catching Hell does. Just various stories, various characters, various genres, and this is the meat and potatoes right here.
Okay. Well, which genres does this book consist of?
It is epic science fantasy. It is very clearly drawn a line between both magic and technology, and both of them exist in that world. And I have two main protagonists. One goes to one world and one goes to the other, and it's about their adventures in those two. So I'm firmly science fantasy on this one.
Is there a movie out that you could equate to this genre?
Big budget's difficult. Actually, that's not completely true. As much as it's not exactly the best movie, I'm trying to remember what it was called, but the one with Will Smith that he starred in with his son, where they go back to Earth.
Oh,
it's
I know that one.
It's not the world's greatest movie, but it would kind of fall into that kind of, like, we're talking post-apocalyptic. There's a combination of technology, whatever kind of quote-unquote magic there is seems to have some kind of scientific backing behind it, albeit kind of loosey-goosey. Yeah, I could get behind that, yeah.
It was called, hang on a second, I'm going to look it up because I did see that film, actually.
I'm never going to remember. I know I'm never going to remember it.
Let's see, it wasn't Aladdin. After Earth, that's what it was called.
There you go, After Earth. I was going to say that, but I thought I was getting confused with that animated movie from the 90s, which was called Titan After Earth. And I'm like, no, I must be thinking of that early Matt Damon vehicle. But no, After Earth. Yeah, I would put it in that same kind of similar category.
So apocalyptic, that means that the Earth has blown up, or we've had nuclear war or something, and we've gone back to being cockroaches in the chain of evolution?
Very much so. In fact, I've done it a few times in this world. If you start to kind of dig into the lore of it a little bit, particularly with my Between Conversations book, it's actually happened at least 3 times for sure. It's said to have happened 4 times, but the very first one, they're called the Falls of Man, and the very first one is kind of alluded to be Noah and the flood, and whether or not that was actually in context to what happens with humanity, perhaps somewhat factual. And from there is humanity has destroyed the earth, and then many years pass, and what I call embracers, which are the magic wielding people of this world, there was a mass destruction on their hands, and then again, very, very long after that, humans did it again. Just regular mortals did it again, and so we are really good at blowing ourselves up. So I wasn't happy with just one apocalypse. I was going for I don't know, maybe I'll aim for a half dozen at some point.
Well,
I'm up to at least 3 for sure.
Okay, in reality, we haven't done it yet, have we? Nature has done it a couple of times with the Ice Age, I suppose. But there wasn't a lot of human beings around at that point. So we wiped out the dinosaurs at some point. But I say we, but nature wiped out the dinosaurs. And then during the Ice Age, we lost some other species. But man seemed to have survived through that. They migrated. But we have not yet wiped out living populations on this planet completely with our technology. I say yet. Do you think it's coming?
I don't necessarily think that it's coming that we would do it to ourselves like that. I mean, I think that the shadow of nuclear war and that kind of destruction, even biological weapons, is always a realistic one. I think things like climate change and the kind of effects that we could have would probably do a far better job of wiping out a bunch of us than people actually putting their finger on the trigger.
So you think we would do it
less sexy when it comes to writing? Yeah,
you think we would do it via carelessness and ego versus intentional destruction? Yeah,
I think that fits our MO a little bit more. Yes,
okay.
Like we're really good at blowing each other up, and we've clearly done it before. But we'd be a whole lot better at just ignoring it or pretending it doesn't exist and waiting for it to affect us directly.
Well, we have blown each other up, but not on a scale that was, I suppose, enough to greatly reduce the population of planet Earth.
No, exactly. In the kind of timeline of this world, that what I call the second fall of man, which is, again, touched on a little bit in my last book, not directly, like it's a book that's very much about focusing on the side characters of history, and it's an event that kind of sort of threatens to happen now, and perhaps in the next 20 to 25 years. So it was humans as we are right now, and we are about to be affected by that second fall of man, that second cataclysm. And by the time we make it to catching hell, we've already been through it a few more times on different levels, and we are many thousands of years into the future.
Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit then about the book? So it takes place when? You said thousands of years into the future?
I'm nondescript about it. I lay some hints about when it could possibly be, but I'm happy with just saying in the distant future, and let the reader kind of figure it out for themselves. But yeah, the story of the book is about 2 young men by the name of Johan and Aryu. Now, Aryu is a young man who has wings, dragon-like wings, and he's trying to uncover the secrets behind those. And their home is destroyed by a robotic army, which is something that they haven't seen before. They are very much just barely past hunter-gatherers when it comes to their societal levels. And they are separated, and Aryu goes into the world of kind of the magic and the mystical, and he is guided by a large Scottish phoenix who had actually been tasked to kill Aryu. And decided to spare him to find out the mysteries of this young man. And so he guides him into this magic world, whereas Johann travels into the magic of the futuristic and the technological, which isn't a world that they didn't know existed, but was one that they never thought that they would have to confront or would march across their home. And so it's the story of the two of them going out into these separate worlds, learning what skills they can, and hopefully at some point meeting up and coming back together to get revenge.
You know, while you were talking, that movie, The Never-Ending Story, came to mind. Is it anything like that?
It has a lot of similar themes, especially the kind of coming-of-age theme and the fantasy themes. But I would say that the Never-Ending Story is more directly fantasy, even though it touches on the real world just by the nature of the story and how it affects Bastian. But I would say that my story has more technology than that. There is absolutely like robots and lasers and large technological cities and hovercrafts and those kinds of things.
Who is your core reader?
I find that a lot of people who like I'd say like Terry Brooks, and I took a lot of inspiration from Stephen King's Dark Tower series, so that kind of audience. And I found that anyone from about 16 up for this kind of stories, as long as they have a taste for fantasy or light science fiction, they seem to really get into it. So that's who I'm looking at right now for that.
And the book it says coming May. Is it out now?
It is. It came out last Tuesday.
Okay.
So not that long ago, just a few days ago.
Okay, great. Have you got any reviews yet on it?
I had reviews of an earlier version of it. There was this, in a roundabout kind of way, as a little bit of a reissue and a remaster, but it's one that I treat like a proper release because the previous one was not in a great state and it was kind of rushed hastily. So for the actual story side of things, I did, and people were very complimentary about it. They really enjoyed it, and it was they like how action packed it is, and that's exactly what I was going for. I was looking for something that drives forward. The biggest problem with the story in its original version was that it wasn't very well edited or very well put together. I was a middle-aged man, but still a young author, if you will, when it came out, and a lot of things got missed. And this has been picked up by a new publisher, now has a proper release, a proper edit, and is much more in the state that it should have been in the first place. The first release was kind of a first pass, and I was never completely happy with it. So I'm very happy to have it into the hands of a competent publisher.
Okay, great. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me at www.markwatson.ca. That's MarcWatson.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show and telling us about your new book, and I hope it does well.
Thank you very much for having me.